we'll do our message and our event here. Once we're done, the Honor Guard's going to reassemble at the river, and then we'll pay a special tribute to those who died at sea. So anyway, we'll go ahead. Please stand for the presentation of colors and invocation.
Detail, halt! Place colors. Right squad, left face. Forward.
Next, we'll have our invocation by Chaplain and Past Commander Les Hofstad.
O God of nations and of men, we pause to acknowledge your power over our lives, instill in our hearts the desire to serve our community in such a way as to ensure freedom, further justice, encourage democracy. We ask your blessings on this memorial service and to look with favor upon the hearts of those gathered here to pay tribute to those who have made the supreme sacrifice for the benefit of the men of our May all that is said and done in our hour of service be pleasing to your sight. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Now we'll have the placing of the wreaths.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, thunderbolts bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Need to make sure my phone was on Do Not Disturb so it didn't ring through later. So again, good morning all. Happy Memorial Day and thank you for joining us today. Memorial Day is a day set aside to honor the men and women who died while serving in the United States Armed Forces. Since the Revolutionary War, over 1.3 million soldiers have died in the various conflicts in which they were asked to fight for our freedoms and the freedoms of others. To say they are heroes is an understatement of mass proportion. Of these 1.3 million soldiers, many were not able to be identified due to bad record keeping, the rush to bury the dead after the battles, or simply unable to due to the brutality of war. During the Civil War, some estimate that nearly half of the dead were not identified. The remains of 2,111 Union and Confederate soldiers were buried beneath the tomb of the Civil War unknowns. During World War I, there were over 100,000 casualties. Even with the use of the first generation of dog tags, many of these soldiers could not be identified and were buried in permanent U.S. cemeteries across Europe. In 1920, New York Congressman and World War I veteran Hamilton Fish Jr. proposed legislation that provided for the repatriation of one unknown soldier to represent all unknown soldiers and their supreme sacrifices. In 1921, 4 bodies of unidentified U.S. military personnel were exhumed from different American military cemeteries in France. The caskets were placed side by side, and Sergeant Edward F. Younger from Headquarters Company, 2nd Battalion, 50th Infantry, American Forces in Germany, was tasked with selecting the body to be repatriated by placing a spray of white roses on the casket. On November 11, 1921, the unknown was interned in the tomb of the unknown soldier as we know it now at Arlington Cemetery. In May of 1958, 2 World War II unknowns were interred in the tomb of the unknown soldier at Arlington Cemetery to the right of the first unknown from World War I. On Memorial Day, May 28, 1984, the only identified body from the Vietnam War was interred in the tomb of the unknown soldier. In 1998, new evidence suggested the remains of this soldier might be First Lieutenant Michael Joseph Blasi, a pilot that had been shot down in 1972. The body was exhumed. DNA evidence was able to positively verify this was his body, and he was reinterred at Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery in St. Louis, Missouri. The crypt of the Vietnam War unknown remains vacant. In 1999, it was rededicated to honor all the missing U.S. service members from the Vietnam War. In 1926, soldiers first started guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier to discourage visitors from climbing or stepping on it during the daylight hours. In 1937 till present, the guards began standing watch over the unknown soldier 24/7, 365. On this Memorial Day, let us remember our friends and family that have served and passed. Let us remember all those that have served and passed as we see the flags on our cemeteries. Let us remember all those that have served and are buried in faraway places where they have fought and died. And let us remember those who have fought and died, who are buried, that are only known to God. And with that, I'd like to present Adam Gallant, currently a Sergeant Major for the 132nd Combined Armed Battalion based out of Moorhead, Minnesota. Adam's career has been in Minnesota at the Minnesota Army National Guard, and he's been at it for 27 years. So please give a hand to Adam Gallant.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak today as we celebrate our country's National Day of Remembrance, Memorial Day. Memorial Day is our nation's day to remember those who perished giving all for their country that they loved. It offers us the opportunity and honor to remember the men and women of our armed forces who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service of our country. It is not a day to celebrate war. but to celebrate valor and patriotism, to decorate the graves as a reminder of the costs of war, and to commemorate the lives sacrificed by men and women, and it is also a day to grieve for those left behind. For many, Memorial Day marks the beginning of summer, the ending of a school year, and the beginning of trips to the lake and outdoor activities. It is a long weekend that provides the opportunity for family reunions, cookouts, and summer sports. For others, it is a solemn occasion that allows the opportunity to reflect and remind each generation of the sacrifices made by those who came before us. It is unclear exactly where this tradition originated. Numerous different communities have reported to have independently initiated the memorial gatherings dating back to 1865. In 1966, the federal government declared that the origin of Memorial Day dates back to May 5th, 1868, when Civil War veteran General John A. Logan called for a National Day of Remembrance to decorate the graves of the estimated 750,000 Civil War fallen soldiers who were buried across the country. General Logan stated, "We should not only remember those who died in defense of their country, but also to renew our pledges to aid and assist those who they left among us, the widows and the orphans." The day was originally recognized as Decoration Day, and initially May 30th was selected as the date to remember the fallen because it wasn't the anniversary of any civil wars. After World War I, the day became known as Memorial Day, and the purpose of the day was to honor the men and women who died in service of the United States of America during all periods of armed conflict. In 1971, Congress passed Memorial Day as a national holiday. This was particularly important as the United States was deeply involved in the Vietnam War. Today we recognize Memorial Day on the last Monday in May. We must never forget the blood that has been paid to get us to where we are. In the words of President Kennedy, quote, "We must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them." As we honor our fallen today, let us live by their dedication and honor their sacrifice. When choosing between what is easy and what is right, let us live by the example of our fallen warriors. And when the values we hold dear are put to test by enemies both foreign and domestic, let us live by their ideals that they gave their lives to defend. Today, we hold the fallen in our prayers, and every day we strive to make them proud. As I close today, I encourage you to remember that we will never be able to replace those whose lives were lost in service of our nation. We will never be able to repay those individuals, and we will never be able to repay their families for their sacrifice they made to the United States of America. What we can do is remember, now and continue to remember, and honor those who have stepped forward to serve their country during its hour of need so that we are able to continue to celebrate life and liberty. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today and to remember those who have sacrificed their lives in service of our great nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. We'll now have the reading of the Fallen Comrades by past Commander Clarence Gagner and Alice Job.
As we recognize those that have fallen in freedom for our days, that we are able to be gathered as we are today, let us continue to remember and really reflect on the service that they perform for our country. A true example of that are the crosses that are to your right and to our left, that it does represent those people, and we really appreciate the work that past Commander Roy Holmes has put in to dress up our area as we present these names to you. I will turn it over to Alice for the auxiliary, and we will start reading those names. Please bear with us.
Catherine Bernier, Matilda Duran, Monica Fallon, Jan Freitag, Barbara Girardi, Margaret Greenwald, Ann Jager, Helen Jager, Nadine Johnson, Bertha Lemieux, Carrie Maney, Leroy Maney, Dagny Pollen, Anna Rayworts, Elizabeth Wisterman, Martha Walker, Tekla Willett.
And for the American Legion, Frank Berg, Jerome Bernier, Roger Bernier, Benny Carpenter, Joe Fallon, Walter Girardi, Howard Greenwald, Omar Gilmet, Omar O. Gilmet, Edmund Hemley, James Jackson, Joseph Jager, Matt Jager, Nick Jager, Alvin Johnson, John Maney, Henry Monin, Ray Parody, Vern Parody, Wilford Raberts, Emil Singer, Leonard Singer, Gerald Toulouse, Lowell Toulouse, Cornelius Van Litt, Jeffrey Van Litt, Bruce Walker, Delmaine Walker, George Walker, Leslie Walker, Martin Walker, Patrick Walker, Rex Walker, Robert Walker, Jim Willett, and Joseph Willett.
Emmerdale Lutheran Cemetery, Clara Anderson, Clara Anderson, can you hear me? Okay. Clara Anderson, Vivian Clellan, Sheila Erickson, Asta Fossum, Darlene Freiholtz, Helen Hansen, Clara Hemley, Hilma Hempstead, Clara Hess, Winifred Burstead Johnson, Marie Kella, Arlene Kelly, Bernice Lafayette, Josephine McCready, Ethel Milligan, Dorothy Myrie, Ragna Norby, Minnie Peterson, Sylvia Peterson, Sigvie Johanna Radell, Charlotte Polly Shervin, Oster Westerlin, Anna Wickstrom.
Added to the Plummer Catholic Cemetery, Albert Fisher, Larry Killian. And for the American Legion, Burton Amundsen, Clarence Anderson, Thomas Broughton, Burton Carlson, Eugene Carpenter, Matt Christensen, Albert Doye, Floyd Fredrickson, Ronnie Freiholtz, Bruce Fritz, Henry Froylan, Philip Froylan, Oscar Hamrum, Harold Hansen, John Hempstead, Art Johnson, Henry Morris Johnson, Laverne Capadol, Elson Lafayette, Howard Lafayette, Ole Matson, Jimmy Meyer, Lawrence Mickelson, Don Nelson, George Nelson, Willard Nelson, Lester Norby, Thomas Norby, Vernon Noterman, August Peterson, Lawrence Peterson, Leon Peterson, Leonard Peterson, Walter Rydell, Erwin Seibel, Leroy Stoney Shervin, Roger Shervin, Paul Tillman, Wayne Tronis, Leroy Westerland, Roy Westlake, Gus Wickstrom, Oscar Wickstrom, Bert Wright, and William Wright.
From the Brooks Catholic Cemetery, Verla Aslan, Veronica Boucher, and Gabby Mercil.
And for the Legion, Stephen Aslan, Orvido Barry, Leonard Bushy, Frank Burgess, Francis Bradley, Daniel Brueggemann, Dwight Brueggemann, Eugene Brueggemann, Frank Brueggemann, Lloyd Brueggemann, Larry Brueggemann Sr., Richard Brueggemann, Albert Bruno, Sheldon DeLage, Victor Doe, Paul Doye, Richard Duckstead, Laverne Felling, Thomas Gagne, Gilbert Jenricks, Lawrence Gerard, Benjamin Hallis, Duane Hintz, Valerian Val Korlowski, Bruce Jasper, James LeBlanc, Alfred Mayer, James McDonald, Everell Mercil, Lloyd Mercil, Alvin Moran, Lawrence Mornville, Joe Nice, Russell Noyes, Lester Olson, Bernard O'Malley, Donald Page, Harvey Page, Morris Page, Ronald Parody, Tony Payment, Ray Paris, Ronald Peterson, Julian Poirier, Ambrose Reese, Roger Riel, Stanley Reserve, Boyd Sabrin, Leroy J. Sabrin, Paul Stahl, Roy Thiebert, Luger Tugas, Regis Tugas, Frederick Tupin, Napoleon Varon, Floyd Wilson.
Brooks Presbyterian Cemetery, Naomi Althoff, Karen Fossell, Clara Haley, Navy, Hetty Matson, Donna Pollan, and Ruth Wilkins.
And for the American Legion, Arnold Arlt, August Burt, Alan Fossell, Ed Greenwald, Arthur Hagee, Henry Hagee, Alan Hansen, John Helly, Lyle Johnson, Walter Katsky, Fred Keeler, Herman Mayer, Russell Pollan, Milo Parsley, Fred Stahl, and Paul Wilkins.
Finnish Lutheran Cemetery, Amelia Escalay, Navy, Fern Escalay, Lena Escalay, Rosemary Escalay, Alma Hansen, and Jean Mott.
And for the American Legion, Lawrence Carpenter, Edward Escalay, Edwin Escalay, Craig Escalay, Leo Escalay, Martin Escalay, Melvin Escalay, Arthur Hansen, Orlando Horn, Roger Hughes, Russell Huteri, Gene Capula, George Capula, Olive Capula, Robert Capula, Will Joe Capula, Andrew Kella, Buford Lawson, Herbert Mott, Eddie Matson, Roger Matson, Rhino Ray Ninonen, Frank Nermi, Roy Roman, Merle Wedger.
Ebenezer Lutheran Cemetery, Elizabeth Pugh.
And for the American Legion, Bernhard Rolstead, Kenneth Dahl, Knut Evenson, Ole Myram, Vedher Myram, Joanne Widduel, Morris Nelson, Alex Neslin, Alvin Olson, Arthur Olson, Eddie Olson, Oscar Royslin, Thomas Royslin, Elma Solberg, Orville Stennis, Miles Swanson, Clarence Sertveit, Jordan Sertveit, Vernon Wedduel, and Dennis Wild.
Clearwater Lutheran Cemetery, Elna Brecky, Lee Halverson, Lily Halverson, Clara Johnson, Mary Johnson, Lily Lee, Idella Peterson.
And for the American Legion, Donald Brecky, Wilmar C. Brecky, Patrick Calkins, Delano Halverson, Nels Halverson from the Civil War, Clarence Johnson, Russell Johnson, Duane Nelson, Walter Peterson, Nels Ralsted, Joe Tishard, Paul Wicks.
Clara Cemetery, Stella Erickson, Alta Peterson.
And from the American Legion, Emil Christofferson, Elmer Erickson, Helga Larson, George Peterson, Herbert Peterson, Lowell Tommy Peterson, Stanley Rose, and William Billy Peterson. And from the St. Francis Xavier Cemetery in Oakley, from the Legion, Willard Bergeron, Robert Blumke, Joseph Boucher, Robert Hintz, Kenneth Lassard, Stephen Paquin, and Raymond Buster Wicks.
St. Peter's Cemetery, Gently, Jean Escalay.
And from the American Legion, Ray Escalay.
Oak Grove Cemetery, Red Lake Falls, Fern Hess, Doris Mowitz, Myrtle Mowitz, Doreen Nord, Harriet Hess Norman, Helen Simpson, Jolene Simpson, Arlene Zimpel.
And from the American Legion, Donald Hess Sr., Floyd Hess, Ivan Hess, William Simpson, Alvin Westerlin, and Duane Zimpel.
St. Anthony Cemetery, Terrebonne, Mary Ann Gagne, Eleanor Leesky, Crystal Martell.
And from the American Legion, Harvey Gagne, Raymond Novak, Ernest Parody, Mark Parody, and Tom Parody. From the Greenwood Cemetery in Thief River Falls, for the American Legion, William Bothman, Jesse Ducamp, Larry Ness, and Dick Dalzell. and veterans that are buried elsewhere. Ingval Berg in Oregon, William Berg, Oregon, Leonard Brecky, Oak Ridge Cemetery, Pennington County, Brett Bushell, Hacksaw Creek in Montana, Keith Demra, Oakdale Cemetery, Crookston, Marvin Ingesether, Cavalry Cemetery, Winger, George Erickson in Grand Forks, Arvo Escali in Nashwauk, Leonard Countryman Fair, Franklin, Wisconsin, Thomas Fallon. Albert Fisher is buried here in Plummer. Francis Frank Ford, St. Joseph's Catholic Cemetery in Red Lake Falls. Harold Giske, Bethany Cemetery, Thief River Falls. Lawrence Granum in Fort Ripley. Merle Gustafson, St. Hilaire Community Cemetery. Harvey Hansen, Los Angeles VA Cemetery. Roy Hansen in Holt. Gus Hadeen, Asphalt Lutheran in Foston. Stanley Huffstead, Salem Cemetery in Oakley. Bill Hole, Salt Lake City, Utah, and a World War I veteran. Duane Howard, National Cemetery in Fort Sam Houston, Texas. Merle Jesme, Oak Grove Cemetery in Newfolden. Brett Johnson, Forest Hill Cemetery, International Falls. Arvid Kella in Duluth. Keith Butch Cruz was cremated. Ted Lucasier, St. Joseph Cemetery, Red Lake Falls. Michael LaFave, cremated. Douglas Maney in Arizona. Hank Ninonen in Wisconsin. John Ninonen in Chicago, Illinois. Harold Norby was cremated. James Norby in New Hampshire. Robert Page in Prior Lake, Minnesota. Robert Parody in Little Rock, Arkansas. Ernest Peterson in Evergreen, Red Lake Falls. Dean Shanor in Arizona. Clarence Sletton, cremated. Tom Smith, Cavalry Cemetery in St. James, Minnesota. Virgil Sorensen, Salem Cemetery in Oakley. Kern Tillman in Fairhaven Cemetery, Santa Ana, California. Walter Toulouse in Sauk Rapids. Norbert Van Litt in California. Ray Westerlin in Newfolden. Harold Wickstrom and Victor Wickstrom buried elsewhere. And Robert Wright cremated in Aurora, Minnesota.
Auxiliary members buried elsewhere. Judy Engesether, Calvary Cemetery, Winger. Evelyn Erickson, cremated. Agnes Geske, Bethany Cemetery, Thief River Falls. Becky Jesme, Oak Grove Cemetery, Newfolden. Alexine Lacashire, St. Joseph Cemetery, Red Lake Falls. Irma Normandin, Calvary Cemetery, Crookston. Dorothy Peterson, Evergreen Cemetery, Red Lake Falls. Marjorie Shanor, Arizona. Inez Norby Turvo, Rindge, New Hampshire. Esther Walter, Evergreen Cemetery, Red Lake Falls. Anna Wickstrom McCook, Navy, Texas National Cemetery, Dallas-Fort Worth.
The next listing is those people who actually died in conflict. Conrad Berg, Henry Berg, Roger Bernier in Vietnam, Carson Fossum, Vernon Grome, Willard Malwitz, the prodigal son, in an airplane, Raymond Martin, Henry Nelson, Lester Norby at Omaha Beach conflict, John Noyes, Moreland Preby, Llewellyn Pugh, and Gus Wickstrom, who was buried at sea.
Fort Snelling Cemetery, Lorraine Haven and Florence Norby.
In Fort Snelling, for the American Legion, Henry Althoff, Conrad Berg, Henry Berg, Carson Fossum, Kenneth Hoven, James Jaeger, Swandra Kella, Robert Laniel, Marlon Matheny, and Leroy Norby. I will turn it back to our commander.
Thank you, Alice, and thank you, Past Commander Gagner. So there's a reason that I wasn't up here reading the names. I had 3 to remember today, and I only got 2 of them right. So at this time, well, actually, what I'd like to do before we go on is just make a couple of announcements. Well, actually, I'll wait till the end. Next, Chaplain Lesholm. Hofstad, please give the benediction.
Let us go forth, dear Lord, in peace with courage, holding fast to that which is good, rendering to no one evil for evil, but strengthening the faint-hearted, supporting the weak, helping the afflicted, honoring all people, and loving and serving them and you, O Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Sergeant at Arms, salute the dead.
Ready. Aim. Fire. Reload. Aim. Fire. Reload. Aim. Fire. Report. Hold. Sound tap. Present. Hold.
Sergeant at Arms, retire the colors.
Flag bearers, retire colors. Point, point. Cut shoulder, point. Forward, point.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out today. A couple announcements I'd like to put out there. We've got the Legion is open for a little bit today, and Deanne from the Legion Auxiliary has, I believe it's barbecue or sloppy Joe with some dessert and coffee and whatnot. So I believe it's a free will donation there. We will be, the Honor Guard will be regrouping at the river for our cemetery for those lost at sea. Couple of special thank yous I want to give. First off, Sergeant Major Alan Gagner, or Adam Gagner. See, that's why I don't read the names. So let's give him a round of applause for coming out. Some other people I'd like to point out, specifically Roy Holmes, past commander. He was the one that came out and set everything up. And he does a lot of stuff behind the scenes, so I want to give him a big round of applause if he's still around here. Also got some other past commanders, Clarence Gagner and Chuck Simpson and David Escalay. You know, they made me being commander pretty easy. Everybody in uniform today could have said that they've done their duty when they reached the end of their enlistment, but everybody stayed on. Chuck and Clarence and David and Roy, they could have quit when they became past commanders, but they didn't. They stuck it out. So I'd like to give them all a great big round of applause. Everybody in uniform. Alrighty, Honor Guard, let's go ahead and regroup at the river, and we'll have the ceremony. And then after that, we will go back to the Legion. And if you want to come stop by, you're more than welcome. Thank you very much. Chaplain, if you will.
Almighty God, our heavenly Creator who has dominion over life and death, grant to us the grace to remember with love and reverence our valiant and honored departed comrades. Grant peace and eternal rest to those who have gone before us. Make us ready for that last hour. Strengthen and console those in sorrow, and bestow upon us your everlasting love. Amen.
Amen. Pardon? No, you can go ahead and do the wreath, and then we'll honor the dead. Sergeant at Arms, honor the dead.
Forward. Ready. Aim. Fire. Reload. Aim. Fire. Reload. Aim. Fire. Forward. Sound tap. Preset. Forward. Water, pull. Retire collars. Forward. Left squad. Reset. Pull. Grab the feet. Forward. Detail, ho! Quarter, ho! Stand up.